Every YouTube guru out there has like this, oh, this is the trend, this is the thing you have to do, and none of it's real. What you want is to send positive signals to the algorithm. And I'm a firm believer, especially in the real estate space, worrying about what camera you have, what lights you have, and how good your editing is the worst thing that you can focus on. Here's the biggest mistake I think people are making with Instagram and TikTok, and that's
I've sold homes on TikTok, got listings on Instagram, but hands down, my most valuable platform is YouTube. And I'm not alone in that opinion. In fact, almost everyone in every industry is realizing the value of having a long-form video strategy. YouTube is a search engine. That means that those views came looking for your content. Those views generally last longer, so you can develop a deeper relationship with those viewers. And on top of that, YouTube represents the holy grail of content. It's stuff that you make today that could be seen next week, next month, or even next year. When I need help on my YouTube channel, there's only a few people that I go to, and Nolan Matthias is one of them. He's built one of the most followed and watched YouTube channels in all of Canadian real estate. On top of that, he has a second channel growing quickly on personal finance, and he's quickly becoming known as one of the top YouTube coaches in the real estate industry. Nolan built his latest channel from 0 to 1,000 subscribers in just 9 days. And in this episode, he'll share with us how you can do that same thing too. So you're not gonna wanna miss your opportunity to sit back and learn how to brand it like Nolan Matthias.
And here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is not so much the political sway of the media. The bigger problem is the amount of consumption that people are doing and how much time they're spending on it. And then when they see something that they don't agree with, fixating on it and going, okay, I need to get really political and I need to, make it my personal mission to get rid of this politician or that politician, instead of focusing on their own internal economies and going, okay, well, all of this other stuff I can't control. It's just noise. I need to pay attention to it, but I need to spend the most time on my own personal situation, on my own personal finances, on my own personal things that I'm doing, the things I can actually control, instead of going, well, oh, this politician, whether it's Trump or Biden or Trudeau or Polyev, is doing this and therefore I'm screwed. It's like, well, no, you're not. That's just a variable that you have to now account for. And if you start looking at it in that way, for me, that's always been the thing that's driven our business, is when the economy gets bad, when things get tough, we're always the company that's growing. And the reason why is because we're just going, okay, there's the variable, and then how can we account for it? And for me, like, that's the exciting part. I like it when it's hard, not when it's easy. And that's why we've grown so much. When anytime the economy's turned, it's like Mortgage 360, Mortgage 360. And I'm not saying Mortgage 360 to promote that as my brand, but we're going to talk about brand anyways. But it literally has become something that we've been known for. It's like, how do we turn that issue on its head and then take advantage of it?
Well, this is really the point of the podcast, is we're trying to explore this idea around creating a personal brand. Everything from your messaging to your consistency, to what you put out into the world, whether or not an agent should be chasing views or virality, or if they should be trying to create a deeper connection with their existing sphere, or if they should be, news jacking or trend jacking, or if they should be like, what is the ultimate goal? And I think that's what I'm really excited about for this conversation, because I think both you and I had that focus first off on those internal economies, which is I got into real estate, only 7 years ago. Our family's personal economy was in a really difficult spot. I was in my late 30s and I was feeling like, this might be over for me. Like the die might be cast already. Nothing can really kind of change. So when I got into real estate, it was like everything that I did, all the videos and the marketing that I did, it had to trace back somewhere to something that I could leverage. Like I couldn't just create content for the sake of having other agents see it or think it's funny or anything like that. I needed it to actually translate to helping sell a home, helping me get my next listing, help me attract more buyers in my marketplace. That's how I sort of founded my YouTube channel. And that's also where I started consuming a lot more content on other Canadian creators. And your channel has been one that I've followed, for years now. as a way to stay really up to date. And like we were just talking about, you've done a really great job of sort of cutting through the noise, the right versus left, sort of the anger that people are feeling in the country right now, and still delivering like, okay, all that being said, and here's the things that you can actually take action on. What I'm curious about with you is, how did you get started? First off, like, what's a little bit of your background so our audience knows that? Yeah. And this is not, I want to be clear to everyone listening, this is not about the fact that Nolan's a mortgage broker or has a mortgage company, which is a fantastic company by all means. But this is about what Nolan has built for his personal brand and on YouTube. And then in addition to that, this is about what Nolan is starting to help so many other people do, which is really understand YouTube and understand social media so they can start to build, this audience for themselves. Yeah.
What's up, guys? It's Brad McCallum here. Sorry to interrupt the episode. I hope you're enjoying it so far. There's just something I wanted to share with you. Have you yet had a chance to register for BAM Mania happening October 18th at the Circa Las Vegas? Now, this is going to be an absolutely crazy event. We've got guys like, check this out. We've got Sharon Srivatsa. We've got Eric Simon, Byron Lazine. We've got Move Me to Tennessee, Chelsea Pates. We've got Neil Dingra, Tom Toole, so many more incredible speakers. And at a time in our industry when so much is changing, you want to be on top of it all, and BAM has it all. So it's going to be in Vegas. It's going to be an amazing time. And of course, at the completion of the event on the 18th, there's a BAM party. If you've never been to a BAM party, they are like nothing else. It's going to absolutely crush, and I hope to see you there.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, the backstory on this, I could go on for like 2 hours on it. And, I think given that this is a branding podcast, then, I think it's important to kind of go back almost to high school, which I normally wouldn't go to. But for me, the way I procrastinated from not doing homework and doing the stuff I was supposed to do in high school was literally by going onto websites like success.com and entrepreneur.com and reading like self-help books, and like everything business was really what encompassed me from a very young age. My dad was amazing. He set up this little golf ball business for me, which was basically him finding golf balls, bringing them to the house, and then him and I would clean them up, and I'd go and sit on the side of a golf course and sell these golf balls. And, the brighter and the bigger the sign, the more golf balls we sold.
So a quick question on that. Like, were any of those books that you read early on, did they still sort of, direct your thinking today? Like, what were some of those ones that, someone could go back and read right now and be just as relevant today?
Yeah. So, I mean, the classics are the classics. I mean, Think and Grow Rich. I'm kind of an idiot sometimes, so it took me like 25 times to realize what the secret meaning of Think and Grow Rich was. That one was huge.
I'm going to pretend I know what that meaning is.
It's in the title.
Yeah.
The secret's in the title.
Oh, think?
So, yeah, think. If you think you do it, if you think you can do it, you might just be able to.
Any other good books?
Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was amazing. Like, I still go back to that book once or twice a year and just go, okay, what were the 7 habits again? There was a book called, and it's escaping me now, but it was the only book you ever need to read on marketing, or the only book you ever need to read on branding. I'll send you guys the link and you can put it in the show notes. But that book it's like 100 pages long, and it's literally everything you need to know about marketing and branding. And I can still go back to that book.
Yeah.
And be like, that 100-page book, super simple, everything that we've done ever since in the mortgage company, whether I was turning around real estate companies or with YouTube, all comes down to the lessons in that little tiny book. And it was huge.
That reminds me of that essay. I'm sure a lot of people have read it. It's a short, quick read. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't read it, you need to read it. And that's just 1,000 True Fans, right? That's another one of those sort of absolute mind-bending things that helps us understand the economy of the internet versus how people used to think of brands like a Coca-Cola or something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's amazing how much stuff Tim Ferriss made famous, right? Like that 1,000 True Fans article, he mentioned it once, and now everyone knows
Everyone knows it. But I mean, 4-hour work week for me, I think was maybe the first time that I thought differently. Like, I don't know that the ideas in it were so revolutionary. Like, there was, VAs and some of that, and the idea of like, you can get a lot done in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So there's definitely great habits, and I love Tim, but that book though was the first time I was like, so I don't have to install hardwood the rest of my life and crawl around on my hands and knees and constantly make less and less.
Exactly. I don't think people realize this, but he basically made the solopreneur's version of Michael Gerber's E-Myth.
Yeah.
Right? Where Michael Gerber's E-Myth was all about building systems and replicating yourself. And it was kind of a what to do book. Wasn't really the how to do book. And then that combined with 4-Hour Workweek, that was the how to do book. And if you were...
I hated the E-Myth.
Oh, really?
Only because of how like it called me out on absolutely everything. Like I got like the first chapter in, I was there where it's like, most entrepreneurs think they have a business, and then what they really, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put this down.
Oh, totally. And then the other one is Robert Kiyosaki wrote, obviously, Rich Dad, Poor Dad before he got completely crazy. I think he's crazy right now, like the things he's teaching people. But he also wrote another book called something about quadrants.
Oh, yeah.
See, I told you I'm not good at remembering stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I have to go back to the seven habits.
The money quadrant, was it that? Something like that?
Might be.
Cash
Anyways,
quadrant?
Cash flow quadrant. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the one. And that one was huge for me because it talked about being an employee versus being an entrepreneur, and then eventually working your way into being an investor and having scalable income that comes in on a regular basis where you don't have to be involved. And to me, that was the big transition period in my life. And I read that one in about probably 2013. And that's where I realized that, the mortgage company didn't actually need me. The real estate company, when I was working there, didn't actually need me. In fact, both of those things operated better when I just said, here's the vision, and I let other people do the work. And then with YouTube, that's been the thing that has allowed me to grow the channel so big is the fact that it isn't reliant on me. All I have to do is kind of create the vision and make the content, and then the rest kind of takes care of itself. And on top of that, it's the only platform I've found where it's legitimately scalable. So if I make a video and I make it, 3 years ago on how to get a mortgage, well, it's still making us money today. Like we can still see applications rolling in from 3 years ago, and it's literally just getting put out there. And I only had to make the video once. It probably took an hour to make, and it's gotten, hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah.
And it just consistently brings in applications, which makes my team money, makes me money. And I'm like this. I'm going, okay, now I'm going to make content on something else silly that I just happen to like or find interest in. But to go back to that question about the background. So, I was obsessed with business. Ended up going to business school, and then realized that in business school, a lot of the classes were set up so you had to work in groups. And I realized very quickly that I'm not the type of individual who's set up to work with other people and have them have just as much say as me. Because I'm like, when we create an idea for a marketing class that is, we're going to build this business, it was basically like a business to help men design dates so that they could take a girl out and impress them. I'm like, that's a great idea, except for the fact that it's really stupid and not scalable. And then I'm like, well, they have just as much say as I do, and I can't kind of control the direction. So I'm like, maybe business school isn't what I want to do. So I ended up just taking economics because the economic stuff was always easy for me. And then how I ended up in the mortgage industry was actually by telling a professor kind of to F off. I had this great professor, his name was Frank Atkins, and he was so engaging. The reason he was engaging was because his shtick was to be like super entertaining, super compelling, and super controversial. And I asked him a question one day about the economy. I said, what's going to happen in the economy after the dot-com bubble burst? It was right after that. And he said, what's going to happen in the economy? Look out the effing window. And I kind of got some nerve up over the next 10 minutes. And if you've ever been in a university lecture theater, they all have one thing in common. They don't have windows. Mm-hmm. So I put my hand up and he said, what do you want? And I said, well, what effing window? And then he kicked me out of class. and a couple of days later, I came back and he said, the question you asked and the answer I gave you about looking out the window Because if you want to know what's going to happen in the economy, you have to become part of the economy. And he encouraged me to go and get a finance job, which at the time TD Bank was in McEwen Hall at the university every single day, trying to recruit people who are going to have degrees in the future. They were trying to create a group of educated students that they could move through the ranks and hopefully eventually turn into executives. And my mom had worked at Bank Montreal for 47 years, and I'd done the take your kid to work day and worked as a teller in a bank, at like 10 or 12 years old. And I'm like, I'd rather put a campfire out with my face than standing behind one of those teller wickets for even like 3 hours a day. So I ended up going and getting the mortgage broker's licensing books. I went from one university, I drove to the other university, picked up the books, challenged the test 3 days later, and then I was licensed to do mortgages and help people with the biggest financial decision they'll ever make, having never actually made that financial decision myself. Now, later on, I helped rewrite the course, and it's way harder to get a mortgage broker's license now, thank God. But at the end of university, 2 years later, I was making as much as a part-time mortgage broker as I would have made as an entry-level investment banker with probably a quarter of the hours, because when you go to get an investment banking job, and you're brand new, like they work you like 20 hours a day. Guys sleep under their desks. And I just went, this mortgage thing seems to be working. Maybe I'll give it a go. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I really realized I really loved helping people. And I loved helping them make that decision because there was so much bad information out there at the time. There's still so much bad information out there, which is why we ended up getting into the YouTube space.
But then you also got into the actual brokerage space for a little bit as a piece. Where you're working on that side of the business, ownership with the company.
Yeah, so there's a company in Calgary here that at the time was the largest independent franchise operation in the country, at least in Western Canada. I mean, when you count like companies like Royal LePage and Sutton, they were bigger, but they were also more conglomerates than what that company was. And it was being just run so poorly. It went from 800 realtors down to 400 realtors in like an 8-month span. And I went to the owners and I said, the guy you have running this company is just killing you. Like, it's all him. People hate him. You go, if you are ever considering selling the company, and it turns out they were selling the company to him. He had an option to buy it. I said, if you're ever considering selling it, I'd love to have an opportunity to talk to you about buying it. And I didn't have the money to do it at the time. I just had a relationship with them, and I just shot my shot. And the next day I happened to be flying to New York City. And by the time I landed in New York City, the owners had left me a voicemail saying, yeah, we'd like you to take the company over and we'd like to sell it to you. Now, I never ended up buying the company, but what I did get was an option to run it for a year and purchase it at the price that we had agreed upon. And if I could turn it around, there was some benefit to me there. I ended up not buying the company primarily because it was a big ship that, to do the things I really wanted to do, which
really
was
difficult to change direction.
Use business as a force for good. It just wasn't going to happen with an existing organization. I mean, it could have, but I don't think I had the skill set at the time to do it. So I decided not to buy it. But in the year that I ran it, we went from losing 400 realtors in basically 8 months to going from, I think the number was 409 realtors up to 411, which are like, yay, congratulations, you gained 2 realtors. Well,
stop the bleeding.
Our biggest competition in the exact same year lost 127 realtors.
Yeah.
Which represented almost 25% of the realtors. So relative to market, we were doing really, really well. And the irony of it was all branding, but it wasn't really the type of branding you might expect. We rebranded the company, but the thing that actually made the company grow relative to the other companies was actually simple. We just decided that we were going to, as an organization, pay for feature sheets for every single realtor in the company. So what would happen was we had a software built, and that software would pull the MLS data from the new listings, or if there was price adjustments every single night, it would automatically send it to a printer, and the printers would print it, package it up, and every morning, the next morning, there would be feature sheets that were all branded, identical for every single realtor across the board. They were printed on cardstock, so not like the flimsy paper.
Quality,
And they looked nice. They were high end. And what would happen was all the realtors would talk about how they were getting these free feature sheets, and it was just part of what the company was doing. Then everyone who went and viewed the properties that they'd put them in, you know, a competing realtor would take a client through 10 houses, and 9 of them would have 8.5 by 11 printed on a laser printer, some of them not even in color feature sheets. And then the one house that they had visited from that company would have this nice, crisp, clean feature sheet. And the realtors actually started having to fight the clients on which property to buy, because all they could remember when they had the 10 laid out in front of them was the one that had the really nice feature sheets.
So what year was this?
This was 2013.
2013. So it's amazing how much things have changed in just 11 years. But you know, one of the things that we always explore is this idea of like what actually is a brand, or you know, brand or a personal brand. And what's interesting is that, especially with brokerages, is there's really sort of 2 brands that they're trying to build to the world. One that's much easier, and then one that's much harder. So there's brand recognition with your marketplace, which is somewhat, I think, difficult because it's less clear what's in it for the agent, right? Like, you know, I was at an office of 200 Remax agents, so I didn't really care when Remax came up at the Flames game, you know, on all the LED boards kind of thing.
I never saw that. I never noticed that.
And then what I think is interesting about that second piece of that brand is the brand that they actually have to build amongst agents. So the way you probably turn that business around is that agents started to see the benefit for themselves. So brand is maybe not so much how we want it to be, but rather the benefit that it actually provides the person that's consuming or using that brand.
Well, and here's the thing, and what's important about that story, because it seems like it's nothing, but it isn't. What's important about that story is a great brand is a brand where other people talk about it on your behalf. And that's what happened. All the real estate agents started talking about the fact that my company gives me free feature sheets.
Yeah.
And then all the other real estate agents have started talking about, well, have you heard about what that company's doing? And then they started comparing what we were doing to what their brokerages were doing or what their companies were doing. And they're like, well, we get this they get $25 worth of feature sheets for every listing. If they do 10 listings in a month, that's $250.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good value when the desk fee's $400.
Yeah.
So they all started talking about it. Everybody in the industry started talking about it. And that's what allowed the company to grow. It was literally that communication piece around something amazing that somebody else was doing. It was a teachable moment. It was a talkable moment. Like, everybody was talking about it. And here's the irony is, from a realtor's perspective, from a broker's perspective, those feature sheets were like $25 to $30. If you go into a print shop and say, I want really nice, I want it to look like this, I want it on cardstock, I want it laminated, it's like, oh, it's $30 for 25 of them. It's like $1 a sheet. What people don't know about the printing industry, and I knew this because I also have a publishing company. I've done work in the books. I have 3 books I've published. The real cost of printing something like a feature sheet is like, for 25, it's like 85 cents. They charge you $25 for it, but it's 85 cents. And to go from 8.5 by 11 normal stock paper to cardstock stock, it goes up to like 86 cents. Sure. So we were paying $1.20 for 25 of these things. Meanwhile, all the other brokerages are going, they're going to go bankrupt. Like, that was their biggest, that was their biggest thing that they would say to realtors who were talking about coming to us is, they can't afford to pay $25 for every agent, for every listing. They're going to go bankrupt. And what they didn't know is we were paying less than $1.
So I think this is the challenge, right? So agents are always like, so what's my personal brand? How do I build this? And clearly with this story, it has everything to do with your reputation. Mm-hmm. Like, so what do you want to be known for? How do you want to be known? And oftentimes it's not about tipping the scale so much where you're like, I'm going to provide the best service. I'm going to invest $1,000 more, $3,000 more into every one of my listings. I'm going to put out 50 open house signs or whatever the strategy is. Oftentimes, the expectation just has to be exceeded by a little bit.
Yep.
You just need to provide something that is a little bit more than what the people were expected, what more than other people are willing to do. And that idea, going back to like think and grow rich, usually that's where the work is done, is like, okay, if I do some deep thinking around this, like, what is my sphere expecting? And what is the local market expecting? What are people seeing on homes at this price range? Like, what does the marketing look like around that? And if I can change that, shift that in some way, that can be the biggest thing that moves the needle. right? And then all of a sudden, you know, you get people into open houses and they're walking in and they're picking up cardstock, or, you know, these days they're walking in, they're like, hey, we saw you on YouTube, and they didn't see the other house down the block for sale the same way. And so when they think about selling their home, they want like a standard of quality that's just a little bit more than what they could expect. And so if you can do that surprise and delight moment, it becomes pretty big. I know this is something, and you know, maybe on another podcast we can talk about, but this is something you do really well with Mortgage 360 on a gifting process, right? Where there's a sense of when you take on a client, you have a simple onboarding document that helps you understand who they are, what they actually like, what they value, and then you surprise them when it shows that you listened to that moment. So that sort of like that idea, that surprise and delight, that exceeding an expectation, that becomes your reputation. And so if an agent's like, hey, I don't know if I want to do YouTube, you know, I don't know if I want to do Instagram or these different things, you have to have something. Yeah. Right. Like you need something. But
and you need to be smart about it too, because there's a lot of real estate agents out there, mortgage people out there dancing around, pointing at shit on TikTok and Instagram, who are literally, they think they're creating a brand. They keep their support. They think they're supporting their brand. It's brand support. That's why I do it. And it's like, if you can't quantify dollars to what you're doing, then you're probably not actually supporting anything. And what I've come to realize about, you know, in 21 years of, and I hate saying that 21 years, because my dad was a realtor. He's like, I've been doing this for 40 years. I'm like, too long, hey? But in 21 years of doing this, what I've come to realize is that for a real estate agent, brand is really not about the logo. It's not about the website. It's not about the colors. Brand is really about who you are. And I have evidence to support this. So when I was running the real estate company, one of the things that we would always do is before somebody left the organization, they had to talk to me. And I would always ask them the same question when they were leaving to go to a different brokerage. And it was, so who's doing your new personal branding? And there was not a single agent who was leaving our company who wasn't also at the same time having a new personal brand built.
Yeah.
It was 100%. And the irony was they were almost always at the time going to Remax, which is, it's not even arguable. It's the most powerful brand in the real estate world.
Well, especially in Calgary. So, you know, it's funny, like when people listen to this podcast from other places, they'll be like, oh, you know, it's not so big here. It's Keller Williams. But in Calgary, for most of the last decade, they're on 43% of the sides or the transactions in the city. So,
well, Calgary was the first non-Colorado Remax ever. That's why it's Remax.
That's right.
First.
It's like synonymous with it's as synonymous with real estate as Kleenex is.
Totally.
Right.
And the irony was, I'd always ask them that personal branding question and say, "Who's doing your personal branding? What are you doing? Can I see it?" And then the conversation would lead into, "So why are you leaving us and going there?" And they say, "Well, they have a way bigger brand. I feel like I'm going to do more." And then that was where I could close that gap with them. And I had a 100% success rate. They never left because I went, so you're leaving us to go to Remax because they have a stronger brand, but you're creating your own personal brand. So you're going to go attach yourself to that brand, but you're going to use the color purple.
Yeah.
So you're already doing the wrong things. And it's impossible for a real estate agent, unless you are the number one guy in the city, to stand out with a personal brand. If you're thinking about your personal brand as your logo colors, what your website looks like, and maybe what your signs look like.
Maybe even brokerage affiliation.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are more than happy to give away 25, 30% of their commissions to go to a company like a Sotheby's or an Engel Volkers. Mm-hmm. And nothing against those companies. They do have a persona of being luxury. Mm-hmm. But unless you're the only agent at that brokerage, people will then choose the agent that most aligns with them, most authentic, that has the strongest reputation amongst all the Sotheby's agents. And if that's not you, then you still haven't figured out the riddle.
Yeah, exactly. And when you really think about it, it really is who you are. And when you think about great brands, like you have a brand in real estate that transcends the local market. Your brand is known all over North America. And it's not because of the McCallum Group logo. It's because of you.
Let's talk more about me here for a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you
no,
like
just
you?
kidding. But let's shift this conversation then maybe a little bit more into, into that idea of, so, like I know you first as a mortgage broker, but not a mortgage broker in the typical sense of, hey, you showed up at one of my open houses and you were handing me like a rate sheet or something like that. What I know you from is from YouTube. And so I think the better way to kind of describe what you're doing at Mortgage 360 and now how you're extending those same principles out to working with some of the brightest minds in truly like in the YouTube space that transcend well beyond just the real estate industry is you've realized that a mortgage broker, a real estate agent, essentially you're a media company that also sells a service or sells a product. And so that's why I find it always fascinating when I watched your content was I'm like, the reason I'm watching this content is because it's shorthand for the conversations that I need to have with my clients and with my team this next week.
Yep.
And so I just don't need to go through all the different biased articles. I don't need to go through the CREB forecast. I was finding myself more and more often relying on 2 or 3 different people in the either Canadian, the local real estate space, mortgage, even the local market update space, where I was like, okay, great. That's great thoughts. Now I'll filter that through what I know and what I'm dealing with. So what's your thoughts around that YouTube channel? Because you've built a channel, your main channel or was your main channel. How many subscribers on that?
That one's just over 40,000. And then the other one that
Just a little bit shy of mine. Is that right?
Yeah. Well,
sorry about that.
I'm not
I'm
gonna
just
lie.
kidding.
Like, hey, listen, like, I'm not gonna lie. When I started, I had like a hit list and you were on it. And I think you were like 9,000 subscribers when I was 2,000 and I caught you and then I passed you. And then we both got to 20 and then you passed me. And so the game's not over yet.
The game's not over.
It's not over yet.
That's the great thing.
You're back on the hit list. You keep getting your way back on there. But, it's interesting because the numbers are really fascinating when you look at the fact that there was 450,000 homes sold in Canada last year.
Yeah.
I had 665,000 unique Canadian viewers. So think about that. Let's assume there's 4 people on each side involved in a transaction. So 2 on each side. It's a couple on each. It's less than that. But let's just assume that because we'll make the numbers seem like they're not as high as they are. Well, if there's 665,000 unique viewers and there was about, let's call it 2 million people involved in real estate transactions last year, that means I spoke to 25 to 35% of everybody who bought or sold a home last year.
Wow.
And here's what's crazy about it is I can stand in a room of realtors and that's not in my local market and say, how many of you know who I am? And not because I want to see how many know who I am, but because I want to make a point. And the point is, when there's a room full of 200 realtors and only 4 of them knew who I was before I showed up, that tells me that the YouTube algorithm is so good that it can differentiate between somebody who is buying a house and somebody who is a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And that my content isn't getting fed to real estate agents. It's only getting fed to the people who are actually looking to use my service or need my service.
I love
which
that.
is compelling.
That's compelling. I mean, I'll share just that one example with the moving to Calgary video that we did last year. I'm like, to this day, it gets, which is now like 8 months later, we're getting probably 400 to 600 views, depending whether it's a weekday or a weekend views. That's 500 days at 5.5 or 500 views a day at 5.5 minutes. That's 2,500 minutes. There's 1,440 minutes in a 24-hour day. So we are literally getting like, 1.75 minutes of watch time for every minute of real time. Yep. And that thought to me is huge. Now I know subscribers isn't like the only or main goal or metric. It's just one of many things a person might want to kind of like follow. But what I think about it is like, well, at any point in time this year, there'll be 40 or 50,000 homes or transactions maybe that'll happen in the market. And, if I've got 45,000 subscribers, even if a home tour only gets 5 to 15,000 views, there's no way that of those 40 or 50,000 transactions, that of all those transactions got 40 or 50,000 views, they maybe got 1,000, 1,500. So I've always thought of my YouTube channel as a secondary MLS. Yep. And that's something that's not for myself. Mm-hmm. That's for the benefit of the people that work with the McCallum Group as a point of leverage for their business. Yep. And that I think is the part that I always try to like draw that string, that red yarn from like, okay, I did this thing over here and it led to a sale or a benefit or a feature sheet for an agent that worked at my brokerage or a feature for a client that worked with us.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah.
There's so many different ways that it affects the amount of business that you do and the exposure that you have. And then what got crazy for us was when people started watching the videos, they'd start watching, 3 or 4 or 5 videos.
Yeah.
And then what would happen is they'd start coming to us and applying for a mortgage. And when my team would get on the phone with them, they'd start going through their normal spiel, asking them questions, going, well, and then they'd start offering them options. And the clients would be like, no, I watched all the videos. Just give me this mortgage. Nolan mentioned it. That's the one I want. What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And we had
Because
always,
that trust has been built.
Oh, totally.
The trust has already been built.
They feel like they've been hanging out with me for like the last 6 weeks, and like I've been literally sitting across the table from them. And it got really crazy when, we built our entire business on repeat and referral business. It was it. I've never spent $1 on advertising. I've spent $1 on advertising, but I've never spent one that actually did anything.
Yeah.
But the whole business was built off of that. And when my team started fighting for the YouTube leads instead of the referral or the repeat client leads because they were that easy.
Yeah.
Like imagine creating videos and your only risk is your time. And I mean, you could do this on an iPhone. I have videos like on the channel I took from 0 to 1,000 subscribers in 9 days. 2 of the videos were filmed on an iPhone, and they're the most viewed videos on those
You guys
channels.
hear that?
Like an iPhone, seriously. And literally, it's like no risk, none whatsoever. And all I do is sit on the other side of a camera 3 or 4 times a week, and I talk to 2 people who are like my ideal clients. They're Jess and Don. They're actually not even our clients. They're our neighbors, but they're like the perfect ideal clients for what we would want. They're easy to get along with. He's an engineer. She's a...
Okay, this is a great point. Yeah. So you're telling me that when you create your content, it's as specific as knowing exactly who that avatar is.
Yep.
Like, this is what's concerning these people. This is what Jess and Don are thinking about right now. This is how they're worried about how the economy's changing, the market. Yep. These are their fears. This is what they're aspiring to.
Yep. He's an engineer. She's a teacher. So I have to explain it in 2 different ways. So I give him the technical explanation, and I turn to her and go, so what that means is this. And people get afraid of being in front of the camera. When I'm doing those videos, there isn't a camera there. It's Don and Jess, as far as I'm concerned, on the other side of it.
Oh, I love that. That is really, really cool, because I think that makes it a lot easier for agents that are looking to start creating content, is to just be like, so who's that person that you want to work with? This is one of the things we talk about on Brand It Like Brad in our starting YouTube channel is, first off, before you get started, like just define that audience. Like, who is the audience that you're best equipped to serve? Like, what do they look like? What are they fearful of? What are the things that excite them? And address it to them. Serve those people. If you can serve them, that's great. And
then
I like
the other
that you
side
make
of
it
it
so
is
granular as
totally
a couple of people.
But the other side, and this is the most important piece, is who do you need to be to serve the person that you want to serve?
Absolutely, right? And so that might not involve the dancing and the pointing or the inside jokes about the industry or memes.
The only idiots watching your dancing videos are the other idiots in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's it, right?
Yeah.
Like the thing is like, I live in that world now where I spend, half my time internally, like with agents, and I love so many of them and what they do for content. And there's probably a marketplace and all that for it. But what happens is that like there's, like I look at, say, someone like my good friend Tyler Hassman, who's doing such an amazing job. He's built essentially a media company around attention for the listings that he gets. But attention is not enough to translate into real estate teams and leverages. You still have to be intentional about that, just as the content that you're creating that's for the industry, your market doesn't always get it or hear it. And the problem and like the blessing and the curse of algorithms is that they know, like, bad content you don't have to worry about. No one's going to see it anyways. Yeah. It's crap. So it's like the thing you're worried about. Yeah, if it's bad, it's just not going to hit. But it's going to find, if it's good content, but it's for the wrong audience, it's like, great. You might get the views, you might get the followers, you might get all those signals of success, but does it actually show up in your bank account?
Yeah. And the answer for a lot of short form content in the real estate space is absolutely not. And it doesn't. And I've been able to, so I do a lot of research and I talk to a lot of people, and I've been able to find 3 or 4 Instagram accounts now, in realtors who are on Instagram, that are actually making money off of their Instagram accounts, they all have one
know a
thing in
few,
common.
yeah.
They aren't making real estate content. Like they post the odd story that goes, oh, hey, here's my new listing. But all the content they're making is literally content that appeals to the exact person that they're trying to attract. So if like they're a golfer and their audience, their ideal audience loves golf, which is actually a pretty good audience to have.
It's a great audience. They're well-heeled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if they're making golf content, and then every once in a while it's like, oh, I sold a house, but it's all golf content, you're going to attract all the golfers, and then you're top of mind when they actually need to buy a house. Now, here's the biggest mistake I think people are making with Instagram and TikTok, and that's treating them like push platforms. So in other words, I'm going to make my dancing pointing video, and I'm going to push it out there, and I'm going to hope the phone rings. And TikTok and Instagram are both set up exactly the same way. They're the single best platforms for you to gather information on your prospective clients and then network with them, which means you're talking to them, not just putting out content and hoping people respond to you.
In fact, I would argue that that's the reason why Instagram is so incredibly valuable in comparison to TikTok is purely the DM messaging platform. Just that ability to have, it has a much more interactive, like people go to the comments way more on Instagram than they do on TikTok. They go to the DMs way more than they do on TikTok. It's a different view or different, you're in a different mindset, I think, when you're on there.
Absolutely. And I'd go a step further than that. I think you need to, if you're spending an hour making a reel for, I don't even know what they're called because I spend so much time on YouTube now. But if you're spending an hour making a reel on Instagram, you need to be spending 4 hours in the DMs with people.
Of course,
talking to people. Like it's networking, it's outreach. And it's crazy because I've been working with a bunch of people doing consulting work for people in the fitness industry. And what they do relative to what the real estate industry does just blows my mind because they are literally using Instagram as a platform solely for attracting people who are like-minded and then communicating and building relationships with them. And like the content's secondary to them.
I get it. Yeah. I like that idea of that. Yeah. They're not creating the content specifically like, hey, this is my new listing. This is, I like that they're out there usually doing something that's adjacent. I think of my friend, Ken Pozek in Orlando. He does an incredible job. Like he's actually built, like, you know, here in Calgary, we've got like Urba Calgary. We've got a few different Instagram handles that basically just talk about Calgary news, right? Some of them go low and they go for like the stuff trying to, you know, incite people, go viral, all that sort of stuff. We see that in the YouTube space, you know, where there's some channels out there that they speak to the fear and the anger that a lot of Canadians have right now of never being able to afford a home, or that the government is, you know, driving Canada down the garbage, or that people's leaving Canada, or they have strong thoughts and opinions on immigration that border on and incite a lot of different feelings in people, and they know that they can exploit those. But when I look at my buddy Ken, he's got not just his own platform, and I think he's done something very similar to you, and he's created an ability for himself to become a media company without creating the same backlog of work. Like he can sit down in his studio, go live, or create something in a few hours, hand it off. I know this is something that you have with your workflow where you're able to sit down and really, sometimes you're saying some of your videos you can kick out in an hour to an hour and a half from shot to edited to published, which just blows my mind.
The record's 18 minutes on a 12-minute video.
Yeah.
Including the upload time.
Do you guys hear that? That, like, how much more content could you produce if you had that set up? So
20,000 views on that video.
yeah, see, this is why I would suggest that, you know, if you're not currently following Nolan, go check out, is it Real Nolan Matthias?
Yep.
Check him out there.
I want to be a member of Real, so I've made my
absolutely
I'm gonna
perfect.
get a real
That's
estate
right.
license or something.
Yeah, get that license. Come on over. Let's roll. And then, of course, you have a couple different YouTube channels, one of which you've just sort of blown up really quickly. In like 9 days, you hit 1,000 subscribers. I just launched Brand It Like Brad. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here was because I went to you for a lot of advice on that. Now, I would say, like, a lot of people would say, oh, Brad, you know, you really understand YouTube, you've had growth, all that stuff. I'd say so much of what I've done has been more instinctive. I think even sometimes with Levy, who's just off camera here running this, Levy will say like, no, let's just do it and let's just post it, right? Levy's a doer. I kind of go around instinct where I'm like, I know this kind of worked, and I also want to put out stuff, and where Levy and I are very alike, we want to put out stuff we're really proud of. But I knew that there was more to just posting and praying. And I knew there had to be some sort of strategy around it for new agents. So like, I want to start let's break down over the next 5-6 minutes here, just some myths and some guidance for people who are struggling with maybe the sort of next step. So if you're going to blow up a channel to say 1,000 subscribers or to whatever that looks like in your market, give us like 3-4 things that you need to consider when you're launching your brand new YouTube channel.
Yeah. So we call it packaging. Packaging's everything. By the way, something I haven't told you yet is we've done this again with another channel that doesn't have my face on it to prove that it's doable.
Cool. Very
so
cool.
We'll have more information coming on that pretty soon.
I think I'd probably subscribe to the channel without your face. I'm just kidding. You're a handsome man.
I'd have more
beard.
subscribers if I'd be beating you if I didn't have my face on it, right? Because he's not as pretty as Brad. No, I'm not going to subscribe.
Cut it out.
So it's all packaging, right? Yeah. So the thing that, and all entrepreneurs are guilty of this. I won't just pick on realtors and mortgage brokers now, but all entrepreneurs are guilty of this. They see something and they go, I can make that better. And instead of making it better, they make it different, and then it doesn't work. Yeah. So the key is to make what is already working better. And what that means is everything that is clickable on YouTube, for the most part, is more or less already out there. And then every once in a while, you'll have a creator who comes up with a new idea, hasn't seen a similar video, and it takes off, and then that's creates out there in the world. It's clickable. So you can be like a niche leader, or you can be a niche follower. I've been lucky. I got to be a niche leader in the Canadian real estate space because there was, when I started, only one other guy really doing it. Now there's a whole bunch that kind of follow what I do, and I teach people what I do in my consulting business that I have now. But if you're going to start a brand new channel, the simplest thing to do is to go either in your market, if you have a market that is really, has somebody that's really doing good YouTube content, or go out of market. Like Dallas, Texas, and Calgary are the two markets that have the most YouTubers and the most successful ones. Yeah. So if you just went into YouTube and went Dallas real estate and then looked at the 5 channels that are there, or Calgary real estate and looked at the 5 channels that are there, and then you just went into each of those channels, sorted the videos by popular, you'll see the ones that got the most views, and you just took the titles, and instead of putting the word Dallas or Calgary in them, you put whatever city you're in, and then make a pretty similar video with a similar looking thumbnail. It's almost guaranteed that it's going to do well, as long as you don't talk about yourself in the first 60 seconds.
So you're saying a lot of agents, like a lot of us, like with our content, we're just overthinking our strategy. We're trying to be too fresh on our take. We're trying to take too creative when really the template's there for what's already working.
Yeah, it's like creating a purple logo when you're going to work at Remax. Stupid.
Gotcha.
So instead, just take the stuff that's already working, take the title frameworks that are already working, don't change them much. And by the way, this is something that isn't frowned upon. It's not stealing. It's literally, these are the things that are getting clicks. So you're using the similar titles and you're using the similar thumbnails, and the algorithm's smart enough to know that if there's a Dallas audience that looks like this for this video, then there's going to be an Albuquerque audience that looks exactly the same. And YouTube's algorithm is good enough that it'll go, okay, well, in Albuquerque, these are the people that looks like these people in Dallas, and they'll just feed that video to those people.
Love it.
So when I did the new channel, the Canadian channel, a lot of people were like, well, you went to 1,000 subscribers in 9 days. It's because everyone recognized your face. Well, the truth is, the channel, when we went from 0 to 1,000 subscribers, we actually went from 200 to 1,200. And the reason why is because for 3 months earlier, we'd been posting videos that we were trying to make better, but we were different. We weren't basing the titles and the thumbnails on anything that was already existing. Trying to make our own stuff, wasn't working. And then immediately when I took the title frameworks from the big channel and applied them to the small channel, it was like instant, done.
Oh, I like that. So that's maybe something for me to consider, I think, even with what we're doing with Brand It Like Brad.
Yep. Well, and here's a good example. Your Brand It Like Brad content, your What's in My Bag video with you laying there with the bag behind it is like a really well recognized video. So, I mean, it's a Peter McKinnon video, it's a Casey Neistat video. So what you did is you took the title that works.
Yeah.
And then what YouTube did was okay, so this is a what's in my bag video, but it's for realtors. So let's find the audience that looks like the people who watched Casey Neistat's what's in my bag video. And then we'll just tweak it so it's the real estate agents that watched that video or the Peter McKinnon video. And it's like, we'll just serve it to that and it's done. Like, that's why it worked so well. Not to mention the fact that you are phenomenal on camera and phenomenal in your production. Levy's amazing too. Now, you said we wanted to talk about some myths and some things, right? Here's the other myth. It's like every YouTube guru out there has like this, oh, this is the trend. This is the thing you have to do. And none of it's real. You find something that's working and you can emulate that. And the one I see right now is like, how much content do you need to make? And some guys are like, oh, vlogs are back. You can make low production content and that's what's working right now. And then other guys are like, you need to make super high production content and then you don't have to make as many videos and that's what's working right now. And the reality is both of those things are true. But if you're going to make a very small amount of videos, like one a week or one a month, they need to be like Brad McCallum level production.
Gotcha.
If you're going to make lower quality production videos like what I make, which is like I flip a switch, camera comes on, super low lift on the editing, then you got to make more content. But the algorithm and the analytics will tell you exactly what your cadence should be, because what you'll see your views go up and then you'll see them drop and then you'll see them go up. And when they drop, that's when you should be releasing videos. And
Gotcha.
I'm a firm believer, especially in the real estate space, like worrying about what camera you have, what lights you have, and how good your editing is the worst thing that you can focus on. Just focus on knowing who your audience is, what the message they need to hear is, and speaking directly to them when you're making your videos. And if you can do just that, it doesn't matter if you film it on an iPhone. The only thing that really matters in my mind is that you have good quality audio, and that's where you just get like the little DJI mics, and whatever you do, don't just hold it like this, because everyone who does that on Instagram and YouTube, you look like idiots. I'm going to be the person that ends that trend.
I would love that trend to end.
Get a little lapel mic thingy like this and put it on, attach it, and don't do that anymore. But literally, audio is the only thing I would really pay attention to, and it's such an easy fix.
One of the things that you suggested to me was, if I was going to release branded like Brad, so I had two big questions, right? There's like this podcast component, like what we're doing right here. And then there was also this idea of like, okay, I've got a video made. Do I start the channel now? Do I get a few videos together? So like, it's day one with the YouTube channel. How many videos do I have ready to release? Why do I release them? Do I pick a certain time during the week? This idea of bucketing, how many different buckets can I have on a channel? Like, tell me a little bit more about like some basic strategy about getting launched.
Yeah, so brand new channel, never launch one video and then hope and pray that it gets views. What you want is to send positive signals to the algorithm, and keeping in mind that YouTube's algorithm is not the TikTok and the Instagram one, which is based on views. YouTube's algorithm is based on AI. It has been since 2013. Everyone's like, ChatGPT, last 18 months. It's like, that's amazing. AI is this new thing. Like, Google's been using it for years. So is Tesla, so is SpaceX. So when you think about the algorithm, you have to think about the audience, because the way the AI is designed is to think about what an audience would want to see next. So when you start a new channel, you can't just give people one video and hope. You actually need to think about, what's the video that I think is going to get the most views of all the ideas that I have. But then you also need to give them 2 or 3 videos, ideally 4 videos. So you've released 5 videos on the first day, so that the audience...
5 videos on the first day.
On the first day.
Okay.
I'll tell you exactly how to do this. So you want to give the audience more of your content to watch. And you want to think about, if they watch this video, what would they watch next? And then what would they watch after that? Because if you can get on your very first video that you release the audience to watch 4 or 5 videos, then that sends really positive signals to the algorithm. That's how we got the 0 to 1,000 subscribers channel to go.
Love it.
Is because we released them all in succession. And what you do is you schedule them. You schedule them to release in the morning. You put 4 of the videos scheduled to release at, let's call it 9 a.m. Eastern time. And then the one that you think is the best, the one that you think the most people are going to watch, you release at 9:05, 5 minutes later, because the newest video will always get the preference. And in an ideal world, what happens is people start watching that most recent one, and then they flow through to the other ones.
Gotcha.
And here's the really important part. Never, ever, when you're launching a channel, especially if you're in real estate, push it to Instagram or TikTok. Because if you're a real estate agent and you have a Instagram or TikTok account, it's probably being followed by mostly realtors. And if a bunch of realtors jump into that content and start watching it, you're sending the signal to the algorithm that realtors are your audience, and you're going to end up fighting that for the next 6 months.
Yeah, one of the things I did sort of early on was I just always, like, I did a couple of key things. I never wanted to promote videos because I didn't want to lose the like the purity of the analytics. I wanted to understand like what was actually working and not, like from an organic perspective. And then the second thing was I really wanted the videos, like if I was going to go to Facebook, I just was like, well, Facebook wants this natively. If LinkedIn wants this natively. And so I would just post natively those same videos to those different audiences. And the videos could work on all platforms just as long as I tailored the actual dialogue or the description to the audience. So if I was posting a listing tour on LinkedIn, I would talk to the people on LinkedIn, which were predominantly professionals and entrepreneurs, from the perspective of why we would do it versus maybe on Facebook, where we would actually talk more about the details of the home itself. So you've got this group now. Now you've got, I think a lot of agents reach out to me all the time and they're like, Brad, I've got, this channel and I do a lot of market updates or I do stuff about the communities, but I really want to start doing some listing tours like you. Can I do them on this same channel? Do I need a separate channel to do it? One of the things that I struggled with was with Branded Like Brad, because I did break that rule. After I let it sort of sit on YouTube for about a week before I shared it with anyone else. But I also knew that my audience was going to be realtors, and I had this big platform of agents on Instagram and
So before
Facebook.
I answer the next question, let's be clear on that.
Yeah.
If you have a list of the exact right audience, so let's say you have an email list of your clients, definitely like wait 5 days, let the algorithm give it some time to find its own audience. But then, a week after you release a video, if you know that you have the exact right audience for that video, definitely send them. But don't send them to the video, send them to the channel page. And you can also do there's a little subscribe link hack, just Google how to do that.
Yeah.
And you can actually send them to the channel page with a link that automatically asks them to subscribe. And then they can pick which of the 5 videos you've created that they actually want to see. And maybe it's the one that you're suggesting they look at, but maybe they want to look at one of the other ones first. And that's all positive signals.
So that's an important thing to just keep in mind. People, you can promote on other platforms as long as those other platforms are your ideal audience that you want for YouTube. But first, give YouTube a little bit of breathing room. Let it do what it's meant to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so now for me, with Branded Like Brad, I was like, you know what, this is going to be, I'm worried mainly because it took us so long for us to just get the content out there that we were like, why don't we just have, a podcast drop every 2 weeks, right? Because I wasn't sure if we could do what we wanted to do, which was in-person shooting. Could we do this at a higher cadence enough to justify it on its own channel? And you kept on saying, Brad, listen, whatever work you're going to do, it's going to be the same amount of work. The only difference is you have a second channel with another piece of channel art. You're still going to have to do a thumbnail, still going to have to do a title and your research and all that stuff. So why did you give me that advice? And why is it so hard for me to accept it?
Well, that's a you problem.
That's
why it's hard for you to accept it. But I mean, the reason I gave you the advice is because this is all about audience. And in your case, the real estate listing tours, the Brand It Like Brad channel, and the podcast all potentially have different audiences.
Sure.
They also might have similar audiences, but you want to make sure that the content that you're putting out is actually getting seen by the audience that wants to watch it. And I have some experience with some guys in the fitness industry, guys that have 300,000 subscriber YouTube channels that tried to put their podcast on the same YouTube channel. What happened is the content that the audience wants is either going to be the normal content or the podcast content. And whatever's the more prominent audience, those videos, the ones that are designed for that audience, are going to step on the other videos. So in other words, if you've got a podcast and you've got videos on how to make great videos, well, if more of your audience wants to watch the how to make videos, every time you release a podcast, it's not going to get seen because the audience on that channel doesn't want to see it.
Gotcha.
So it just kills the potential. That's the first reason.
But there's also overlap.
Yes.
And the overlap is the part where I think it gets kind of cool. Like the people that watch my listing tours, a small portion of them would like to also learn how to create content for themselves because they're realtors as well.
Yeah.
And then maybe a small portion of the people that want to learn how to create content on Branded Like Brad and our tutorials and some of that stuff might also be the kind of people who would want to listen.
Yeah.
And the overlap is what is kind of like the magic.
This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
So this is the magic. This is what's called clustering. So I'll use our buddy Tom Story and Steve Karish, who both have separate
The Tom
YouTube
Story Show.
channels.
You have it on your...
Tom Story Show right here, right?
Yeah, right there.
If you haven't seen these guys' content,
The best.
This
Love
is
these
like
guys.
this is the blueprint for it in the real estate space. So what they did was they both had separate YouTube channels. I was actually supposed to be involved in the Tom Story Show, but I refused to be on it because it wasn't the Nolan Matthias show. That isn't actually what happened. But we talked about doing it. I didn't have bandwidth. They decided to do it themselves. And what ended up happening is what's called clustering. So now you've got the Tom Story Show, which is a podcast channel, and you've got Steve and Tom's channels, which are individual channels. He's in Surrey, or Steve's in Surrey, Tom's in Toronto. And if you look at the numbers and you look at the data on the 3 channels that they have now, the Tom Story Show is growing. Mm-hmm. And the other 2 channels, their individual channels, are growing as well. And they're growing faster. And they're growing at the same clip. They're always at like 12 and 13,000 subscribers. They're almost identical. And what's happened is the podcast channel is actually out there finding a different audience. And when the audience finds the Tom Story Show, they end up inevitably finding Steve Karish's channel, and they end up finding Tom Story's channel, and the 3 of them grow as a unit. This is also what happened with the Canadian real estate space. So when you look at my channel, I kind of became the cornerstone of the Canadian real estate space. And it was kind of like the algorithm was kind of following what I was doing. And what I was doing was I was following what the Americans were doing. And I just created the same content, but in a Canadian form. And then what happened is we got clustered. So when you go into the YouTube studio, you can see other channels that your audience watches.
So that's something that people should be doing, right? So if you have an existing channel, right, and you're creating content out there, take a look at some of the other channels that are getting suggested or watched along with yours.
There's a threshold for it to see that data. But if you can't see the data, just go into incognito mode and put a link to one of your videos in and just look at what's showing up on the right-hand side.
Cool.
And you'll be able to see the other content that's clustered with yours. So what ended up happening is my channel grew. My audience was watching your channel. They were watching Bald Prairie Real Estate, who's a Saskatchewan guy. They were watching Steve Saretsky. They were watching the Tom Story Show. They were watching Steve Karish's show.
Market
channel.
Mania.
Market Mania got clustered in with us, and now he's the leader. Just because he's not even in real estate, he's
talking. He's
an
very
extremist.
extreme ideas. Yeah.
But what happened is, as soon as we all got clustered, and people started finding the other channels, inevitably, everyone's content would get served to somebody who found, for example, Steve Saretsky's channel.
Gotcha.
And then everybody grew. So when you have all these channels with different creators that are growing, and they're growing together, and then you think about that from the perspective of, well, what if I created 5 channels?
Yeah.
Well, now I've got a podcast channel. I've got Branded Like Brad, and I've got Brad McCallum's main YouTube channel. Well, if the algorithm is searching for a certain audience with the podcast, and then searching for a certain audience with the Branded Like Brad channel, and there's an overlap in the audience, the algorithm, the AI, is smart enough to know that if they're watching this channel, they'll want to watch this channel, and they'll serve it up for both. So what ends up happening is it's like you're on a fishing boat, and instead of having one line in the water with 2 different hooks and 2 different types of bait, you end up having 2 lines in the water, and you're catching more fish.
I like that.
There's some stuff around like there's some stuff around how some major podcasts have done this. The one in our space that's probably the most relevant is Graham Stephan.
Yeah.
So he had his main channel.
Then he has like We Love, was it the Iced Coffee Hour?
Iced Coffee Hour. He has the Graham Stephan Show. I don't think he does Stefamily anymore, but he's got 3 or 4 different channels. And when you look at his growth was good, but it really blew up when the other channels got created around it. And it's all because there were different audiences that were being found, and eventually when they found one, they found it all. And then that's why I suggested that you don't put the podcast and the brand like Brad stuff on the same channel. It's because you have way more ability to catch more fish if you've got them separate.
You know what's interesting? As you're saying this, I was just thinking again to, you know, I was kind of mentioning my friend Ken in Orlando. And one of the things that he did, because he just was like, there's some content that doesn't quite fit on my Instagram page and doesn't quite fit with my YouTube audience. Like people were very much like, I want to see Ken. I love Ken's take on Orlando, on the future of these communities, on theme parks and all that stuff. But there's only one Ken. Yep. And so he's got this team of 30 people. He's got this media department around him now. And he could scale if he brought more people in. So what he created was first off an Instagram channel that was called Orlando Reel. And the Orlando Reel was like, hey, this is sort of newsworthy content, definitely focused around sort of lifestyle, news, like new projects, new developments coming, like stuff around the theme parks, that kind of stuff.
He's done a great job on it.
He's done an amazing job. He's I think one of the most complete realtors in the business. But when we look at recently, he decided to finally kind of convert that content into a YouTube channel called the Orlando Reel. And when he did that, all of a sudden that same overlap kind of happened. I was about 4,000 subscribers behind him. And then I caught him right at Christmas or New Year's kind of thing, and actually just passed him right in the mid 45,000 subscriber thing. And then he had a couple of videos blow up on Orlando Reel. And then it was just like within a few days, it was like both channels were going up. And so he was getting this sort of just duplicity effect, where as his main channel was growing, he was arguably building this incredible asset over here. And when that one grew, it helped him grow his main asset over there. It was a really, really cool function. So yeah, I love that idea. And we're seeing this, like, I mean, obviously Mr. Beast is a guy who's got, you know, like 78 different channels. I remember seeing that one video clip where he's like, hey, just pick any channel and I'll show you the AdSense revenue on it. It's like, whew,
well, I can't go into detail on that because it's not my story to share, but I work with a bunch of the guys that work with Mr. Beast, and I can tell you unequivocally the reason why he went from 3 million to 200 million subscribers in basically 3 years was exactly what we're talking about.
Wow.
No, here's the caveat to this whole thing though, is don't go and create a whole bunch of channels just because. Like get one started, and you really have to develop the bandwidth to have multiple channels, and one channel's hard enough. Multiple channels is really hard. But if you were, for example, to do something like have a main channel on real estate, and, you know, if I were to create a brand new real estate channel, I would probably do this. I would probably have the odd listing tour, like it might be maybe 10 to 15% of my videos.
Sure.
That fits in perfectly because your audience is looking to see houses. I'd probably do another 30 to 40% newsworthy topics, because that's how you gather an audience really quickly. Like when the government makes a rule change or Airbnbs are outlawed in your city, like making that type of content will get watched.
Blanket rezoning, absolutely. And then the rest of it would all be educational stuff. And here's what you need to know about the educational stuff is if you think about your client's journey from the moment that they decide that they don't want to live with their parents anymore, or their parents decide enough's enough, you're like 33, you need to get the F out, all the way to when they actually close on the property and when they're thinking about moving up to the next property. And you make educational videos for every step in the way: how to get pre-approved for a mortgage, how to choose the right realtor, how to decide what community to live in. And you make all of those videos and they're educational. In the beginning, they aren't going to perform well, but if you combine that with news content that is going to get a lot of views, and then eventually those clients stick around and get the education from you, that's where you've got a client base and a consistent client base that will last forever. And then the real magic of this is it's not like Instagram and TikTok where those videos live for 3 days. The
YouTube algorithm looks at it as this is the audience that wants these videos. They're potential home buyers. And not everyone's always a potential home buyer, but when they become a potential home buyer, YouTube will tag them and say, okay, that's a home buyer now. And they'll move them into that audience. And when they get moved into that audience, they're going to see your videos. And that's the secret. That's the magic.
I love it. I think one of the things that I've always struggled with, building a YouTube channel based on tactics around this is that piece of like, where does your own branding sort of come into it, right? And so, I think maybe one of the reasons why when you say, hey, that's your problem, why you push back. Yeah. I think I push back on it because, I as a creator, I value the act of creation, and right, and creation is not just an iteration, not just a copy, not just, hey, this worked in Dallas, so now let's do it here. I think a couple of kind of takeaways from this conversation for me is, first off, is the fact that there are other people doing it is all the more reason for you to do it. That's not the reason you shouldn't do it. The fact that other people are successful in your market, in your city with this type of content, that should be the thing that inspires you to do it in the first place. It doesn't mean that there's enough is enough. And most people, my friend Paige, she was telling me how she was at this listing presentation and the lady was like, hey, you know what? I really want to create a baking, just like a baking Instagram account, like doing shorts, but everyone's like, there's just so many of them. And Paige is like, I haven't seen any baking accounts, of course. Right. Yeah. And so we make this mistake that because we're following it or we see it, that it's saturated, there's no room for it, but clearly there is. And the fact that there is other people doing it is almost always the reason that our content might more likely be successful rather than trying to be that one-off genre creator, style creator. Yeah. I know, and I know Levy knows this too. We follow a lot of people that create just ball out incredible YouTube content, insane edits and all this stuff. And I watched them 4 or 5 years later and I think they just never blew up, right? They were so original, so incredible, so talented, but just the audience never really found it for them.
They made vanity content instead of making content for an audience. And if you're making vanity content, nobody wants to watch it. Oh, look how great I am. And
yeah, that's it.
I'm not saying it's all vanity content, but it's literally, it's like I made content for me instead of making it for my potential audience.
Well, I think the purpose is that this is the hardest part with all this stuff is that it still has to serve someone, right? This is, it'd be great if we were just creators. Yeah. That'd be cool. But, most of us have mortgages and bills to pay and, teams to run and all that sort of stuff. So we really want to be creating content that has intentionality in it. So I think the one place that I push back is I hear I know agents will listen to this and they're like, okay, I got to build a couple of different channels. I got to launch with 4 or 5 videos, and they'll leave out the branding. They will leave out the personality, the storytelling, the empathy. They will think, okay, my avatar is this person, but they will leave out that part where it's like, hey, you know what? There's an energy or a mood right now, just in Canada at the moment. And if you don't speak to the fact that people are feeling like the Canadian dream is slipping away, if you don't speak to the fact that a lot of these people are finding it harder to stretch their money as far as they did even 5 or 6 months ago. They have these fears around them. Many people still have to buy and transact in this market. So there's no question about that part of it. But the part that agents, I think, lose out too often on is they'll go after the tactics and then they forget that their brand is that emotional connection that they're making with those people, that part of them that says, hey, I'm like you. I understand your worries and your fears, but here's the thing. From my perspective, there's a couple of things you could consider, right? All of those facts being true, all those worries and fears, they should not be just dismissed. It's not always a good time to buy for your own personal economy. It's not date the rate, marry the house, right? There's a lot of different things to kind of consider that might be right for one person and wrong for you. Yep. And so if you can't get that piece of it, you end up losing the personal brand. Maybe you gain some views, but I find that if your content is not something you're passionate or really interested in, you're going to end up creating great content that gets views, but you're going to get burnt out.
Yeah, totally. And, I'll be honest and vulnerable on this. That was probably one of the biggest problems with my channel, was that connection to the audience. I was just like facts. And what I found was, when I started talking more about my own personal experiences, not making the video about me, making the video about them, and then talking about how I've been in that situation.
Yeah.
That's when things really started to take off. And
I noticed that shift even in your channel.
Yeah.
Right?
was
Because
deliberate.
I think one of the things that you were telling me is how you have the male equivalent of resting bitch face. Is that what you said? That was your words. I never thought that. But for me, everyone says with me, like, oh, Brad, you're using your hands, you're smiling, and you're energetic and all that stuff on camera. But what's interesting, though, is that, that doesn't necessarily create genuine connection unless people see the authenticity through it. Yeah. It's usually that storytelling. And I think I've seen that with yours more and more. And I think maybe that's one of the things that's really resonating with people. Yeah. So,
and that's one of the hardest things for me to do. And it's totally deliberate. That shift was deliberate. And it had to be because my audience was connected to the information, but not to me. And now that they're getting more connected to me, it's growing more and more and more and more. Yeah. And it's cool because now I get to actually share my personal experiences.
It's almost as though you are earning permission with them.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
And so it doesn't have to be in the first video or maybe in the first 15 videos, but as that, those 1,000 true fans start to assemble, right, they want to go a little bit deeper with you. Yeah. And so they'll permit you, not necessarily to self-promote, but to talk a little bit more about yourself. I'll give you one quick example on this, and then I want the audience to learn where they can follow you, how they can potentially work with you, some of the cool workshops you've been doing lately. But this idea around, how we oftentimes label ourselves in the industry. Like an agent will love to say like, hey, my name is Brad McCallum here, and I'm your local Calgary area expert. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, if you say that early on in the video, you've not demonstrated proof. Yep. You've promised something, and you've actually gave yourself a label that they're not yet, you've established with them. So there's a trust that gets broken right away.
And let's call a spade a spade. You don't need to tell them you're a real estate agent. They're on your channel. They found you. They know,
for sure.
They know why they're there. They don't need you to tell them how great you are.
Later on, see, once you've demonstrated through proof, right, that you are an expert, you can then maybe introduce yourself far later in the video, maybe at the end of the video, because those are the people that will actually give a dang about who you are at that point because they're still around. I found like what I like to do is just, instead of saying like, hey, this is who I am, I say, I like to think of myself as a bit of an expert on Calgary. So if you do have some questions about it, reach out. I'd love to help. Absolutely. People will allow you to aspire to thinking something greater about yourself, right? People will allow you to say like, that's aspirational, right? Because people like to think of themselves, I'm a bit of a wine connoisseur myself, right? Or I'm really good on the grill or whatever it is, right? Yeah. People will allow that if you aspire to something, but if you tell me right off the bat who you are, why you're so great, I'm kind of like trying to look for reasons you're not.
If you want to really tell people who you are, Gary Vaynerchuk's so good at this, and it's not a thing that he says, it's the environment that he's in. If you look at his office, he's got a shelf in the back, and you know everything there is to know about him. He's got his football stuff up, his cards up, his books up, like everything his New York Jets stuff, like everything that you need to know about him is there. It's in the background. He never needs to say a word, and that's the best way to do it. And I want to backtrack on one thing that, we talked about the market being saturated and everything else. And this is a point to the point of, why YouTube is so powerful and why the market's never saturated. And if you look at, whatever market you're in and you see that there's 5 YouTubers already and you go, well, I'm not going to compete with that. Well, what if when you got into the real estate industry, you had gone out and talked to somebody and said, well, there's 5 realtors in Calgary, you can't compete. And you went, well, I'm not going to do it then. Like, no.
That's a great point.
Right? So the point I want to make, and I want to make it really clear about is that when you look at YouTube as a platform, you're playing the long game. This is about getting content out there that scales who you are for the long term. And I'm talking 2-3 years down the road, not just a flash in the pan like some of the other platforms. But when you make that content, the thing that is going to bring clients to you is exactly the same thing that helps you win a listing appointment or get a buyer to sign a buyer brokerage agreement with you. They're going to interview lots of people. They're going to gravitate towards the one that they like. So if you can put who you are out onto YouTube for free, in a lot of cases get paid in AdSense for putting content out advertising your business, and then just be who you are, well, the people that are compelled to deal with you are going to choose you over the other 5 people. Or let's say there's 100 people on YouTube in your market. It doesn't matter how many there are, because it's YouTube for a reason. You're putting out who you are in a scalable fashion so people can find you. And when they find you and they love you and they fall in love with you, there's no other option in the market. They're going to choose you every single time.
I love that. Okay, I think that's a great place to end the podcast, man. Thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Guys, Nolan Matthias is just one of these people that really dives into the data. He understands the backside of things. He's working with some of the best and brightest minds in the YouTube space. If this is something that you're thinking about doing, you're ready to kind of commit to that side of things. You've been enjoying what we've been doing over on Branded Like Brad. You want to really kind of dive in a little bit deeper. I would encourage you to reach out to Nolan and see how you can connect with him. I was just on a week ago with I think it was like a $97 sort of 2 or 3 hour mastermind where you really broke down some really cool stuff. So the resources are out there, and there's a ton of bad advice. There are some channels that are devoted to helping agents learn how to build their YouTube channels. And I would just encourage you, go to the source, go look at what they've built in their own markets, and you're going to find some really unsatisfying results. Yep. So please do your research. That's why Nolan is here on this podcast, is because I believe that he is someone who can help you take a brand that you're trying to build for yourself, that personal brand, and make sure that it just gets that gasoline that you want in your market. So thanks a lot, buddy.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed this conversation, we got some more great ones coming up with other thought leaders. We'd love you to check them out. So don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Branded Podcast.